face. A lot of it's generic information, text-driven information, which you can find, if you're doing searches on the internet. But actually having face-to-face dialogue with someone who can tell you, well, this is the route I took. It might not be a traditional route, but you can get there if you try. Also, it's about giving the person the confidence to go on and either do some extra training, upskill, or decide it's not what they thought it was after having that initial conversation. It might be a perception that they thought when they get into this industry it would be all singing, all dancing, and realistically they've spoken to someone who said, well, it's not actually like this. This is how it will go, and you've got to be prepared to do maybe some duties outside of your main job role. But what it does is it allows people to think, be a bit more creative and realistic about their expectations of what they're going into.
That's a really great idea, especially because you're right. A lot of things, even over here in the United States, is all online now. You really don't go in to talk and shake hands and look people in the eye. And that's one thing that a lot of young people are spending a lot of money and time in careers and in college, coming out in debt, and they realize this is not the avenue that they want to take.
Absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head there, really, Yolanda, because our research has sort of told us that a lot of graduates or people who have left school and going into employment are just taking jobs because they're looking at the brand and thinking it's a great brand, but not looking at the mechanics behind the brand. And if they have not had a conversation, if they've not got to interview stage, or they've never had a chance to speak with somebody who's in that industry, it's quite a difficult process to get in and have a chat with, unless you know somebody in there usually. So a lot of people are falling short at even the application stage because they're not even getting an interview lined up where they could ask these questions. As we know, the recession's hit everywhere, and there's lots of people going for lots of maybe for one job you've got sort of 20, 30 people going for the same job. However, if you've had the opportunity to have that dialogue, you might be able to put something on the application form that would make an interviewer stand up and say, oh, this person knows just a bit more about that career because they've been through this process.
Now, Dill, tell me, are you also helping or targeting, middle-aged people who maybe downsize and have to go back into a career or shift into careers? Or is that something, that you might be looking at doing at a later date? 'Cause I know you haven't launched officially yet.
We cater for anyone from the age of 18 plus, and we have no age limit as to whenever you feel you don't want to work, really. We've got people who are currently working, but they want a career change and a bit unsure of who to speak to, or to test the waters of what industry they want to go into next. We've got people who've been made redundant, who've been in a job for 20 years, have transferable skills, but a bit unsure of where they can utilise those skills in what other areas. And I think people tend to, once they've been in employment for a long time, they tend to look at the areas that they're familiar with. So if it's accounting that they've been in, they tend to go for accountants and look for the accountancy brands, whereas they could be looking in another area which is completely different, another industry, say travel and tourism, but it might be a travel company that has an accountancy department, but they wouldn't think to look in another industry to utilise their skills. So the actual system, our platform, will enable us to do some matching of skills that people already have, and maybe how they can utilise those skills, transfer them into another sector.
That's a great observation because yes, I mean, even in America, I know some people, some good friends that might have had, 20, 30 years in a field. And because that field, quote unquote, may not have as many openings, they're kind of at a loss right now about what the next step to take.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And we've, as I said, the research has showed us so much in terms of what people are asking for. People who have been in careers for, as I said, for 20 years are looking something completely different. It might be they've been in the housing sector. They now think, well, with a threat of redundancy looming, it's now time to look at a career change. And I've always wanted to be a midwife, so I'm going to look at midwifery. Now, there's no sort of process or platform that will allow you to currently do that at the moment. To go and have a chat with a midwife, so I can ask those questions, So yeah, we're providing this as a service, and we're hoping, and we feel quite sure that we're going to get a huge response from both sides, from companies and from the users of the service, as we've already got hundreds lined up, and we haven't even got there yet in terms of launching. So.
And that was my question.
It's keeping me busy.
Yeah, that was my question. How are you? What's the response on the corporation or company size, as far as bringing these people in to talk to, someone in reference to what's expected of that career?
Companies, in terms of their corporate social responsibility, the companies here, and I'm not sure, I'm only talking from the UK perspective because I'm not sure how it works in the States. But a lot of the companies here are engaging in corporate social responsibility. And what they say, most of them are doing much of the same kind of things. So it's more of a tick box exercise, and it's not as tangible as they would like it to be. So the buy-in from companies in terms of what we do, they can see that they're adding value to somebody outside of the company. They're adding an extra, I suppose, an extra activity in terms of corporate social responsibility to what they currently do. And they can see it's quite tangible in terms of what their employees are going to give, in terms of the advice and guidance to somebody who wants that information. And we also look at it as part of the development of staff as well, because staff will be able to articulate to others what their job role is actually about, and they are engaging with the wider community that they actually work in. So from the companies and the corporates' point of view, it's a real good way of introducing corporate social responsibility into where they currently are. And actually, they do want to give something back that is quite tangible. And it's cost effective because it doesn't cost anything to do that, because it's quite short slots of time that we have the introductions for. So it's either you have a coffee with, a chat with, lunch with, a session with, or a day with an employee. And it all depends on what the employers want to give in terms of time and the industry that they're from.
So, this is a new concept. You haven't launched yet, but yet you have, interest. You have already reached out to people. So with this business versus your initial business of young graduates, these are the things that you're doing different. You're kind of understanding about the pre-launch, talking to the actual potential clients or users before you move forward?
Absolutely. And getting a real understanding. I think the difference is it's not my understanding this time, whereas the young graduate was more about my understanding. This time it's about the user understanding and the company understanding. So I've sort of reached out this time to make sure what I'm offering is suits them rather than it suiting me. And I think when I sort of launched Young Graduate, it was more about what I thought was right to do as a service.
And I mean, as a business owner myself, yes, LaunchOver 40 has did some adjusting and tweaking, because you do come up with an idea, there's a need, you've done your research, but sometimes what you deliver and how you deliver it may be a little different once you talk to the end users.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've tweaked a lot, I must admit. We've tweaked a lot because as you're speaking to the users, as you're speaking to companies and businesses, they will give you an insight into what their needs are. And we may have to look at, well, what we're doing might not fit everybody's needs, because not one size fits all. But if we can bring in different elements of what people are asking for, and then put that out there, we're probably on the right track for moving forward.
So, Dio, what would be at least the top, three things that you would tell any woman that's looking to start a business, or, she's had this great idea for quite a while. She's, in one industry, but she see the need. What's the top three things you would tell her to do before she move forward?
I think I would say network and surround yourself with people who you aim to aspire to. So that would be, if you want to run a particular business in hair and beauty, start going to hair and beauty networking events, things that are relevant. I wouldn't suggest going to every networking event, because you need to have the relevance in terms of your product that you're selling and the type of customers that are out there. So I'd say that would be a top point for me. Go out and find out who is doing what you're doing in the industry, and find out where they're going, and try and put yourself in that position and be available. Secondly, and I'll tell you a story. I was invited, this was when I was starting up, I was invited to an event, and at that time I didn't think the event was that relevant to me, although I wanted to know a bit more about that industry. And the event was £25, and I think that would be about $50 in your sort of money, your currency. And I was torn between spending £25 to go to an event that I wasn't quite sure of, wasn't quite sure of the people that would be in attendance, or there was a concert on that same weekend, and the ticket price was £25, and spending that £25 there. And I was really torn between the two, because I've been waiting since I was 3 for this concert to come around. And I really wanted to go to this concert, and I decided against it, because I thought, well, okay, I'll go to this event. I know somebody had invited me, and so I thought it was courtesy to go. Anyway, off I popped to the event, and from that £25, I believe it's opened a door to thousands of pounds worth of business, because I was sat amongst people I would probably never had contact with before, a completely different surrounding, and gained many contacts who I'm now in contact with today, all for £25. I mean, the dinner cost more than that at the end, which I probably had to pay a further £25 for. But it was all worth it. So, yeah, networking is a top one. And I would say, don't always, I mean, there's loads of free networking events and they're great, but sometimes there's those that you have to pay a bit more to be in the circles of established people. And I think you need to pay a bit more sometimes just to be in those circles, to get yourself known. So that would be another top tip for me. Just pay, maybe if you sort of budget yourself to do 2 or 3 paid events each year, try and get to those paid events, because chances are you'll find it's the people who are really committed to business that will be there, and you make some really good connections. There might not be a customer, but they might have some information that is invaluable that you probably wouldn't get anywhere else. And my third tip, and this is about always dressing appropriately. It doesn't matter where you're going. I think even if you think, oh, I'm just going to go to that meeting, or I'm just going to meet with that person, always look your best, because you don't know who you're going to be sat on the public transport next to on that journey. So, always look your best. because people pay attention. People pay attention to how you arrive, and, you know, whatever you put out there is what you're going to get back.
That is a great point, 'cause